June 27, 1874. Adobe Walls, Hutchinson County, Texas. 28 buffalo hunters and one woman versus approximately 700 Comanche, Kiowa, and Cheyenne warriors. Key metric. A dawn charge that tested the survival of a trading post against a coalition determined to protect their world. Before sunrise, the Texas Panhandle lies still, a vast plain of grass and buffalo trails stretching toward the Canadian River. At Adobe Walls, a cluster of log buildings stands as a fragile outpost of commerce, its sod roofs heavy with dew. Inside James Hanrahan's saloon, the air is thick with tension. At 2 in the morning, a ridgepole cracks the sound, booming like a rifle shot through the dark. Men leap from their blankets, fearing an attack. They repair the beam, but sleep does not return. Most remain awake, dressed, unaware that their instincts have already saved them. Beyond the corral's 8-foot cottonwood fence, a ridgeline conceals a force that dwarfs the tiny post. Hundreds of mounted warriors, Comanche, Kiowa, Cheyenne, wait for first light. Their medicine man Isa-tai has promised victory. The hunters will be asleep, their bullets powerless against sacred protection. Among them rides Quanah Parker, a rising Kwahadi Comanche leader, his band tethered to the buffalo herds now threatened by the hide trade. Adobe Walls is no mere trading post. It is a symbol of intrusion, a stake driven into the heart of Comancheria. As dawn breaks, the charge erupts. 700 riders surge across the grass hooves, thundering, some closing within yards, to hammer doors and windows with rifle butts. Inside, 28 men and one woman scramble to defend 5 buildings. The first shock of gunfire erupts, revolvers and lever-action rifles answering the assault. 3 hunters fall quickly, 2 Shadler brothers in their wagon, Billy Tyler in a doorway. Yet the walls hold. The coalition, expecting a rout, meets a storm of lead. This is no ordinary skirmish. The Second Battle of Adobe Walls, fought on June 27, 1874, pits a coalition of native nations against a handful of buffalo hunters armed with long-range Sharps rifles and fortified shelters. It is a collision of spiritual power and industrial firepower, of a people fighting for their way of life against an economy slaughtering their buffalo. Did this charge shake the southern plains as a native triumph, or did it mark the beginning of Comancheria's end? The answer lies in the hours and days that follow, where courage, prophecy, and rifles will decide the fate of a world. The story of Adobe Walls begins long before the dawn charge of 1874, rooted in the vast domain of Comancheria and the forces that reshaped the southern plains. In the early 19th century, the Comanche nation dominated a horse-powered empire stretching from the Arkansas River to the Rio Grande. Their mobility, honed by generations of raiding and hunting, made them the undisputed lords of the southern plains. The Texas Panhandle, with its Canadian river valleys, served as a vital corridor for buffalo herds and war parties. To the Comanche, this land was not merely territory. It was the foundation of their economy, culture, and survival. By the 1860s, however, the world of Comancheria faced mounting pressures. The United States, emerging from its Civil War, sought to secure the frontier through treaties. The Treaty of Little Arkansas in 1865 and the Medicine Lodge Treaty of 1867 promised reservations, rations, and peace in exchange for native relocation. These agreements allowed continued buffalo hunting in designated zones, but their terms were often vague, their enforcement inconsistent. The Kwahadi Comanche, including bands led by figures like Quanah Parker, rejected or ignored Medicine Lodge, remaining on the staked plains. Delayed rations and broken promises drove others back to the open plains, where raiding and hunting sustained their independence but fueled tensions with settlers and military posts. A new force accelerated this crisis: the buffalo slaughter. After 1870, commercial hide hunters armed with new tanning methods and high-powered rifles devastated the northern bison herds. By 1872, their operations pushed south into the Canadian River country. Rail towns like Dodge City, Kansas, became hubs for a booming hide trade, with tens of thousands of skins shipped east. To the Comanche, Kiowa, and Cheyenne, this was no mere economic shift. The buffalo were their food, shelter, tools, and spiritual core. As herds vanished, their world unraveled. Adobe Walls itself carried a layered history. First built in the 1840s as an adobe trading post, it lay in ruins by the 1860s, remembered as the site of Kit Carson's 1864 battle against Comanche, Kiowa, and Plains Apache warriors. In spring 1874, a new camp rose on the old ground log buildings with sod roofs, including Rath and Wright's store, a blacksmith shop, and Hanrahan's saloon, all enclosed by a cottonwood corral fence. This outpost served as a resupply hub for buffalo hunters arriving from Dodge City, men like Billy Dixon and a young Bat Masterson who saw the Panhandle as a land of opportunity. On the native side, leadership coalesced around two figures. Quanah Parker, a Kwahadi Comanche war leader, viewed Adobe Walls as a direct threat to the buffalo herds his band depended on. Isa-tai, a young medicine man, wielded spiritual authority, claiming visions that promised bullet immunity and sleeping enemies. His words united a coalition of roughly 700 warriors, Comanche, Kiowa, Cheyenne, in a strike not just to destroy a post, but to halt the hide trade's advance into their hunting grounds. This was no act of vengeance. It was a calculated bid to preserve a way of life. In spring 1874, wagon trains from Dodge City rolled into the Texas Panhandle carrying buffalo hunters to the Canadian River. Men like Billy Dixon, James Hanrahan, and a young Bat Masterson established Adobe Walls as a hub for the hide trade, deep in lands the Comanche still claimed. By June, the post housed 28 men and 1 woman, their 5 log buildings a fragile anchor in a sea of grass. Confidence in their Sharps rifles and the post's isolation masked a growing unease. Rumors swirled of native war parties on the move, but many hunters dismissed them, trusting their firepower and the vastness of the plains. At 2 in the morning on June 27th, fate intervened. A ridgepole in Hanrahan's saloon cracked its report, echoing like gunfire. The men roused from sleep repaired the beam and stayed awake, unaware that this accident had robbed the coalition of surprise. As dawn neared, 700 warriors concealed on a ridgeline prepared to strike. Isa-tai's medicine promised an easy victory. The hunters would be asleep, their bullets harmless. Quanah Parker and other leaders aimed to overrun the post, sending a message to all intruders. The charge came with first light. Hundreds of riders poured across the plain, their war cries splitting the air. Some reached the walls, pounding doors and windows with rifle butts, expecting to find sleeping men. Inside, the defenders scrambled. Sharps rifles designed for long-range buffalo kills proved unwieldy at close quarters. Revolvers and lever-action repeaters barked, halting the initial rush. The cost was immediate. 2 Shadler brothers died in their wagon. Billy Tyler fell in a doorway, and a 4th hunter would perish later. Outside, at least 15 warriors fell so close to the walls that their bodies could not be recovered, a grim testament to the attack's ferocity. The coalition regrouped, stunned by the resistance. Quanah Parker, wounded in a later push, was forced from the fight, shaking faith in Isa-tai's promises. The warriors shifted tactics, using high grass and terrain to creep closer, while the hunters, secure in their buildings, began to leverage their Sharps rifles' range. Skirmishing replaced massed charges, with both sides trading shots across the plains. The defenders, cycling between fear and defiance, counted ammunition and braced for a siege. The coalition, still holding the numerical advantage, surrounded the post, occupying bluffs and coulees. For 2 days, the standoff persisted. Warriors fired from cover, testing the hunters' resolve. Inside Adobe Walls, the strain grew. Men repaired barricades, conserved rounds, and calculated the days until relief might arrive. The coalition, too, faced pressure. Each failed assault eroded belief in their spiritual protection, and ammunition dwindled. The battle became a psychological chess match, with neither side able to land a decisive blow. Yet, the hunters' fortifications and firepower held firm, while the coalition's unity began to fray under the weight of mounting losses and unfulfilled prophecies. By the 3rd day, the siege at Adobe Walls teetered on a knife's edge. The coalition of Comanche, Kiowa, and Cheyenne warriors, still numbering in the hundreds, held the surrounding plain as their snipers harassing the post from distant bluffs. Inside, the 28 defenders, battered but unbroken, clung to their log buildings. Ammunition was low, nerves frayed, but the walls and their Sharps rifles gave them an edge. The coalition, sensing the stalemate, gathered on a ridge, perhaps to signal a continued siege or to plan their next move. In this moment, Billy Dixon, a seasoned hunter, made a fateful decision. Spotting a group of mounted warriors on a distant ridge, he borrowed a .50 caliber Sharps rifle its reach, surpassing his usual .445. Estimating the distance at over 1,500 yards, Dixon took aim, not expecting to hit, but hoping to warn. The rifle roared, and a warrior fell from his horse, struck clean from the saddle. Later measurements pegged the shot at approximately 1,538 yards, a feat Dixon himself called a lucky scratch. To the coalition, it was a thunderbolt. The shot shattered more than a single life. It broke the lingering faith in Isa-tai's promise of bullet immunity. Warriors now knew that even their distant positions were vulnerable to the hunters' rifles. The psychological blow rippled through the coalition. Leaders, including those who had followed Quanah Parker and Isa-tai, convened in council. They weighed their options: continue a costly siege risk, further losses, or withdraw. Ammunition was low surprise long gone, and the spiritual assurance that had fueled the charge lay in tatters. The coalition chose to disengage. Not because they were defeated in numbers, they still vastly outnumbered the hunters, but because the combination of fortified buildings, long-range firepower, and broken prophecy made further attacks untenable. By the end of the third day, the warriors began to melt back into the plains, leaving Adobe Walls standing. The battle was over, but its echoes would reshape the southern plains. This climax revealed a stark truth. The charge on Adobe Walls was a display of Comanche resolve, a coalition united by Quanah Parker's leadership and Isa-tai's visions. Yet, it also exposed the limits of horse-powered resistance against an industrial system. The hunters' survival secured by log walls, and a single extraordinary shot tilted the balance toward a future where firepower and economy would dictate the fate of the plains. Adobe Walls was both a stand and a turning point, a moment where courage met its match in a changing world. June 27, 1874. Adobe Walls, Hutchinson County, Texas outcome. 4 hunters killed, approximately 30 warriors dead. 15 bodies left near the Walls Key Metric A battle that sparked the Red River War and signaled the end of Comancheria. The immediate aftermath of Adobe Walls was a study in contrasts. The hunters, bloodied but alive, counted 4 dead, the 2 Shadler brothers, Billy Tyler and 1 other. The coalition suffered heavier losses, with estimates of 30 warriors killed, their bodies scattered across the grass, 15 so close to the walls they could not be retrieved. The post stood, its log building scarred but intact. Buffalo hunting in the region slowed briefly, a partial victory for the coalition's intent, but the hide trade resumed under Army protection by summer's end. Lieutenant Frank Baldwin, arriving later with scouts including Billy Dixon and Bat Masterson, confirmed the battle's scale, cementing its place in frontier lore. The true impact of Adobe Walls unfolded in the months that followed. United States authorities, viewing the attack as a declaration of war, launched the Red River War of 1874-1875. Multiple Army columns swept the Texas Panhandle, targeting Comanche, Kiowa, Southern Cheyenne, and Arapaho bands. The campaign's goal was clear: force native peoples onto reservations in Indian Territory, ending large-scale resistance. By 1875, relentless pursuit, dwindling buffalo and starvation, compelled most holdout bands to surrender or be captured. Comancheria, the horse-powered empire of the southern plains, ceased to exist as a free-roaming reality. The buffalo slaughter, already underway, sealed this transformation. By the late 1870s, the southern herds were nearly extinct, severing the economic and spiritual foundation of plains nations. Adobe Walls, fought at the edge of this collapse, marked a hinge moment. Quanah Parker, wounded in the battle, emerged as a pivotal figure. After the Red River War, he became a principal leader on the Comanche Reservation in present-day Oklahoma, navigating the transition from warrior to diplomat. His presence at Adobe Walls tied the last great mounted charges to a story of adaptation within imposed boundaries. Today, Adobe Walls endures as a historic site, its markers and monuments commemorating both native warriors and hunters. Local reenactments and histories keep the battle alive, but its meaning remains contested. To some, it is a heroic stand by outnumbered hunters. To others, a tragic miscalculation driven by Isa-tai's visions. To many, the beginning of a final dispossession. The battle's legacy lies in its complexity, a collision of prophecy, courage, and industrial power that reshaped the southern plains. Adobe Walls was more than a fight. It was a moment where the Comanche world met its limit. Reflect on this. When does resistance preserve a people, and when does it hasten a collision with a larger system? How should Adobe Walls be told today to honor Comanche, Kiowa, and Cheyenne? Voices, share your thoughts. Is this a story of a Comanche stand-up buffalo hunter? survival, or a turning point that changed the plains forever.